What's up, everybody? It is Jordan here from Wednesday Night Warhammer. This week's video, we're talking all about the Neurolictor. How to Neurolictor. This guy has risen up in points quite a bit. He's a little bit expensive for what he does, but I still think he's a very powerful tool for the Tyranids army. And I wanted to take a moment and make this video and talk about exactly how I would use him. I'm going to include a couple of lists that I cooked up at the end that really highlight him as a fantastic unit, and along the way we're going to learn a lot about things that we can do in order to incorporate him in our gameplay and really give a really nice buff to our Tyranid units. If that sounds like something that you're interested in, hang out with me while we talk about the Neurolictor. So what can this guy do for a Tyranid army? If we're zooming out, there's a lot of obvious things that he can do, but I'm just listing the things that I feel like really make him an interesting choice. So first up, yes, he's going to battle shock units in your command phase within 12 inches. They make a battle shock check. That is also going to then make the primary quote unquote math for your opponent hard, meaning your opponent can't just put a unit on your objective that you only have 1 or 2 OC on and just automatically assume that they're taking you off that objective. Because if they fail the triggered battle shock from the Neurolictor, then whoops, all of a sudden you have 5 additional victory points that your opponent wasn't planning on. And then in addition, that unit that is on the objective is going to be, of course, +1 to wound from the Neurolictor aura. In addition, it has lone operative and infiltrate, meaning that it can get wherever it really wants to at the beginning of the game. And then with lone op, as long as you are measuring out distances correctly and really being cagey with this little guy, he's going to stick around for probably longer than your opponent is interested in having him on the field. In addition, because of those two things, he's great for secondaries. He can be in a very good vantage point just at the beginning of the game and allows for him to move around and control the board and do actions like containment or engage on all fronts or cleanse. In addition, because he is strictly a support piece, I never really charge with my Neurolictors. It also makes him great for secondaries because you will have a dedicated unit, the Neurolictor, to do those secondaries at different portions of the field. So you don't have to worry about sacrificing any other units to do these action-oriented secondaries because the Neurolictor is filling that slot as well as a buff piece. He's surprisingly durable. -1 to hit, lone op, and then a 4 invuln with 7 wounds is very annoying to kill. It really is. 7 wounds is a great breaking point because that means 3 damage weapons. You're going to have 3 weapons go through to kill it. 2 damage weapons. You're going to have 4 to kill it, just because that's how math works. And believe it or not, you'll have to have 7 1 damage weapons go through. So he does have wounds and he does die pretty relatively quickly if opponent is focusing him down, but it does take quite a bit of effort to kill a 90-point model for what it's doing. In addition, it's lots of army synergy. Its whole thing is being able to give +1 to wound to any unit that is targeting a battle shock unit within 12, of course, and then it's synapse as well. So it's able to pass off the synapse buff, it's able to buff Tyranid units with +1 to wound, and it's also able to make them a little bit more durable with the -1 to hit it gives off against things that are battle shocked within 12 of it as well. He's a pretty cool little dude. Narrow Disruption is his ability that makes one unit within 12 inches of him in your command phase take a battle shock check. It's just good, because in your command phase you haven't scored primary yet, and you can do a couple of things. You can either plan about where you're going to go with your secondaries or with your army just in general, or it can flip a primary point, and that's actually happened to be quite a bit. And then Psychological Saboteur is the other ability that gives any unit that is within 12 of this dude battle shocked. They're going to get -1 to hit, and then all of your Tyranid units are going to get +1 to wound against that unit. So these two abilities combined in conjunction really make the Neurolictor a very important support piece. The thing that's a little bit awkward sometimes is it happens in your command phase. You can't move and then trigger it. You can't do it in reaction in your opponent's turn or anything. So it is kind of reliant of your opponent's movement. Your opponent has to decide to move within that 12-inch aura. There's things that you can do in Vanguard Onslaught. After they move, you can reactive move with 2 Vanguard units, and then you might be able to scoot a Neurolictor into a place where your opponent wasn't planning about, and then trigger Battle Shock tactics. I think that's pretty much the only movement trick that we have in order to get him in a different spot. But the thing that I like to do is kind of planning a trap for my opponent and really force my opponent to either not care about the Battle Shock or just risk it, and so they're either going to risk taking Battle Shock and be on the point that a Neurolictor is covering, or they're going to put multiple different units on the point since you can only Battle Shock one. So the next slide, we're really going to take a look at capitalizing on either of those things that your opponent is choosing and making the use of the Neurolictor and the units that surround it the best. All right, so in this map, I've kind of put 3 Neurolictors. I'm probably not running 3 Neurolictors if I'm running Neurolictors, but anyways, in this scenario, we have 3 Neurolictors set up to cover objectives around the map. And you can see it's a little crudely drawn, but it's fine. 12 inches out from the Neurolictor, and we're making sure that that entire 12-inch bubble is going to cover that entire objective. Okay, the only Neurolictor that I'm not sure would be able to do this perfectly is the one in the middle, but you can do things like just put it just outside of the wall, and it probably will be able to cover that 12-inch aura of the objective. You want to stay hidden and safe. Just keep this guy as safe as possible. Measure line of sight and make it difficult for your enemy to commit. Either have it not possible for them to commit, into the Neurolictor, or force them to send multiple different units onto the point or towards the Neurolictor if they are afraid of the Battle Shock. Remind opponent of the Battle Shock benefits for you. Just let them know, like, okay, if you're within 12, I can Battle Shock them, and I could get +1 to wound, and you're -1 to hit if they are Battle Shocked. You're not lying to them, but if you remind your opponent of this, they might be wary of putting their units within 12 inches of the Neurolictor, and it could dissuade them from holding primary that they might otherwise just full on go onto the point. Baby your Neurolictors. They're durable, but they can absolutely still be destroyed. They can still die. So make sure that they're as safe as possible. So there's 2 different scenarios that your opponent, if they're really concerned about the Battle Shock thing, that will happen. They will either not touch any of the objectives in this point, and they will score worse on primary because of the Neurolictor, which, woohoo, that's great. Or something that I feel like opponents do a lot is they will put 2 units onto one objective. And that is because your Neurolictor can Battle Shock one of those units, but it's not going to be able to Battle Shock both of them. In my opinion, this is still great for us. The reason is you have effectively made your opponent send twice the number of units out to the center or onto an objective than they normally would have. And in that case, you are going to be able to punch back and punish your opponent, twice as much as what they normally would, because I feel like a lot of time in 40k, they would just put 1 unit out to control the objective and then try to make you come out. However, if they're wary of the Battle Shock check and they really want to make sure that they have the potential to hold the primary during your turn as well as carry over to their turn, then they will send 2, maybe 3 units out there, and then the rest of your Tyranid army will have the opportunity to then jump on and eat delicious biomass. You know what I'm saying? When you are setting up the Neurolictor trap, make sure you're checking these things out. First up is make sure your 12-inch aura covers the entire objective. Warhammer 40k, winning the game is all about being on objectives, and if your 12-inch aura is fully covering the objective, then that means if they put a unit on there, you're going to be able to make them to force a Battle Shock check. Next, make sure your opponent can't easily activate into the Neurolictor. There are times where I put my Neurolictor onto the objective just to control it, because he's kind of durable and he's kind of annoying to kill. But a lot of times I'm standing off the objective. I'm just barely covering 12 of the objective, and I'm making it really annoying for my opponent to, shoot into him or charge him or whatever. It's going to allow for your units to either capitalize on that battle shock or counterattack if the Neurolictor is attacked. So if they really put everything in and they charge or they run up, so they're within 12 of the Neurolictor, then that means they're going to be 1 on an objective, which is very easy for the rest of your army to stage and counterattack. Or 2, they're going to be right in your Neurolictor's face and probably also in the face of the rest of your army. In addition, like we talked about before, if they're only putting 1 unit on the objective, there's a chance that they can battle shock. So oftentimes opponents will put 2 or 3 units on there. And then the rest of your army can kind of just, sweep up 2 or 3 units as opposed to just 1 unit that might have held the objective. This is all some really cool stuff, but always plan for your opponent to succeed the battle shock. Do not make your entire game plan hinge around your opponent losing the battle shock if they come in within 12 with the Neurolictor. It should be kind of a positioning trick to force your opponent to double think and check about different areas that they want to be in. But it shouldn't be 100%, okay, I'm going to win because they're going to fail their battle shock. Because it's heavily relying on a dice roll, which a lot of the times is actually in favor of your opponent with the battle shocks. Be ready to advance your Neurolictor up the board after Shadow's turn. I kind of like to play really cagey with my Neurolictor, at least until I pop Shadows, which is normally turn 3. But when you pop Shadows on your opponent's turn, at least your turn before, I think you should kind of position your Neurolictor not in the front, of course, but in a way where he has the ability to advance out and really spread that 12-inch R around, so that if your opponent drops a whole bunch of battle shock units and Shadows in the Warp, you want to make sure that you are able to capitalize on that +1 to wound, because it also triggers with things that don't fail just because of its ability. It's any battle shocked unit. You're going to get +1 to wound if they are within 12 inches of the Neurolictor. So kind of position him so that he's able to jump out and then spread that buff throughout your entire army. Last but definitely certainly not least, be prepared to trade your Neurolictor, but don't plan on using it early. It's one of those pieces where you can be prepared to lose it, but don't really plan on it. Really don't give your opponent a clear and easy opportunity for it to eliminate your Neurolictor without any consequences headed their way. If you like content like this that is going into deep dives about specific Tyranid units, tactics, and how to play the game of Warhammer 40k, then heavily consider subscribing. This channel is, I think, one of few channels who regularly post about Tyranid tactics and cover many Tyranid things. So if you play bugs, come and hang out with us. In addition, every single Monday, which today is Monday, we do Army List review shows around 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want my advice on your list, go onto our channel, of course, subscribe, and then go into the post section, I think, of our YouTube channel. They changed it recently. In there is a post that I've created where you can copy and paste your army list, and I'll take a look at it. Members are going to get a little bit more priority, but everybody's list is reviewed and looked at in due time. So check it out if you'd like. In addition, we have some really cool merch that will be shown directly below this video. And last but not least, thanks for pushing us over 5,000 subscribers. It's absolutely insane. It looks like we're well on our way to 6K. Thank you for the support. Let's get back to the bugs. One of the things that I feel like a lot of people might have trouble with is comparing the Neurolictor to the Lictor and trying to use the Neurolictor exactly the same way that you would a Lictor. And that would be, do 1 or 2 secondaries and then maybe go out to fight a skirmish piece or be really annoying to a character or something because it has precision. I think that is very different than what you need to do with the Neurolictor. Neurolictor needs to be cagey, almost always never charging, really using the support from the battle shock pieces, making use of its 4-up invulnerable save, and then just being annoying for your opponent, threatening, triggering battle shocks, etc. That's the kind of stuff that a Neurolictor wants to do. It does not have fight first, and its damage on its weapon is damage 1 instead of damage 2, which is a huge difference. So with your Lictor, it's better in combat, it fights first, and it's way cheaper. It's 30 points cheaper. Of course, still don't throw away your Lictor, but if you lose your Lictor, it is less important than your Neurolictor, because your Neurolictor buffs pretty much your entire army. Lictor is going to buff your victory point total, if that makes sense. They're very different units. Be very careful with your Neurolictor. don't try and run it the same way as a Lictor. And make sure that you are measuring charge distances, measuring line of sight, as well as making use of its lone operative ability. Expend your Lictor, have it go out there, tango with some characters, and definitely hide your Neurolictor and make sure he is sneaky for almost the entire game. So these are some combos that you can use with the Neurolictor, the best places to use this guy within the Tyranid Codex. We've got Vanguard Onslaught, of course. You're going to be able to have a 6-inch lone op with it with Surprise Assault. If you trigger Surprise Assault on a unit and the Neurolictor is within 12 inches, not only is that unit that triggered the Battle Shock going to get +1 to wound, then any other unit in the entire game is also going to get +1 to wound since your Neurolictor is within 12. So you can do something like your Gargoyles are about to shoot at something, boom, 1 CP, Surprise Assault from the Gargoyles. They fail the Gargoyles shooting, and then your Exarchins or whatever that are way downtown get +1 to wound against it since the Neurolictor is within 12. But be careful with that. It's not for sure a thing that your opponent is going to fail Battle Shock, but it's definitely something really spicy that you can pull off. Synaptic Nexus. The Synapse, of course, he has Synapse. So that detachment is all about making sure every single unit has access and is in Synapse the entire time. So an additional unit with Synapse is going to help with that. In addition, the Battle Shock grenades, it's very, very good. During your command phase, you trigger Battle Shock. If they fail it from the Neurolictor, of course, then you can spend 1 CP and make them take a bunch of mortals. That's great. So now not only are they Battle Shocked, but they've taken mortals, and then the rest of your army is going to be able to activate into that unit way better. In addition, in both of those different detachments, I like to run the Neurolictor plus the Death Leaper. If your opponent is within 6 inches of the Death Leaper and within 12 inches of the Neurolictor, that means there's a potential of 2 Battle Shock triggers, one from your Death Leaper at -1, and then your Neurolictor triggering, of course. So if both of those trigger at -1, that's a really good chance that they're going to fail at least one of them. In addition, Shadow in the Warp, it goes really hard with this dude. Meaning if your opponent has 4 or 5 units that get Battle Shocked from Shadow in the Warp, that's pretty tough. One thing to note that the Death Leaper or Battle Shock happens in your opponent's command phase, not your command phase. So there are 2 different timings with that, but it is, I don't know, it's pretty easy to stack up. Like if you run up the Death Leaper and Neurolictor is within 12, Death Leaper is going to make whatever unit is close to it take a Battle Shock at -1, and then if you are still able to activate in some way in your turn, you're going to get +1 to wound against that unit, and that unit will also get -1 to hit because it is within 12 of the Neurolictor. Both of these lists in this video are very spicy, very cool list. The first one that we're taking a look at is this Synaptic Nexus list that I think makes great use of the Battle Shock mechanic as well as the Neurolictor himself. So looking at our characters, we have a Walking Hive Tyrant with Synaptic Control. I personally have been doing Last Word, the Bone Sword, and Sliding Talons recently. I really enjoy that loadout for the Hive Tyrant, but it is up to your discretion. Venom Cannon is also a good pick for it. The Narrow Tyrant, I had the points left over, so Power of the Hive Mind is in there as well. Makes his Flamer super, super good with Strength 6, AP 2, 2 damage. It's very, very nice. Then I have the Death Leaper to trigger the additional Battle Shock methods that we were talking about. And then the Parasite of Mortrex, just because he is super cool and also has the ability to trigger Battle Shock and just be annoying. One thing that I like to do with the Parasite is you can rapid ingress Parasite onto a point. It's got lone op, and it is probably pretty difficult for your opponent to deal with, or put him in the backfield or whatever. He's just a really, really good utility piece. Then we have 2 Gargoyles. If you're a fan of the channel, you know what I say about double Gargoyle. It's pretty good. So 2 Gargoyles in there to score primary, of course, do any secondary that you want, and then move block from the rest of your monsters. Into our other data sheets, the meat and potatoes of the list, we have a Biovore, of course, because you're playing Tyranids, double Maleceptor, double Neurolictor, double Norn Emissary, and a 6-man Zone Thrope Squad. This list is very fun to play. I'm not sure it's going to be taking down any GTs or winning any championships or something, but it is very fun to play. The double Norn Emissary, the double Maleceptor really make it this awesome tank that can just push up the field, and then the Neurolictors make it kind of difficult for your opponent to activate into them appropriately. So if this kind of list interests you, you have something in common with me because it looks really cool to play. Now, this Vanguard list is, I think, the definition of spice. This is something, it's not exactly what my buddy Kyle has been cooking up, but he's been wanting to try Screamer Killers with the Neurolictor. So this list kind of incorporates them in a way that helps the Neurolictors make sure that they have Battle Shock triggers. And the rest of the list is also kind of geared around Battle Shock triggers as well. For Vanguard Onslaught, if things get Battle Shocked and you are able to get the Neurolictor in place with +1 to wound, that's really, really good, because I feel like the hardest thing to, make sure you're doing in Vanguard Onslaught is honestly killing your opponent's models. Because sometimes they have a hard time with the strength toughness disparity that a lot of these units have. We have relatively low strength compared to a lot of models in the game right now. So this list is trying to mitigate that with making sure we are able to get enough Battle Shocks off to have the Neurolictor activate in the way that we want them to. So let's look at the list. We have double Broodlord. Of course, we're going to have double Gene Stealers as well. We have the Death Leaper for more Battle Shock stuff. The Neuro Tyrant is going to be attached with the Zoanthropes at the end, of course. And then we have a Winged Hive Tyrant. I think the Winged Hive Tyrant is just a very good, piece for the army, because it gives free CP, and he just runs around and kind of hits people pretty hard. I think the enhancement that I put on this, it's not included on the screen right now, I will probably update it, is Hunting Grounds that I put on either the Hive Tyrant or the Neuro Tyrant, just to make things coming in to the battlefield take a Battle Shock check. And then there's, of course, additional places for those Neurolictors to activate. You could also put Chameleonic on the Winged Hive Tyrant. I think that is also a very good choice as well. Then in the battle line, believe it or not, just one Gargoyle. I'm actually of the proponent that in Vanguard Onslaught, in my opinion, you're probably going to be running a lot of scoring units. So there's a good chance that you only want one Gargoyle unit. In addition, it's going to allow for your Gene Stealer bricks to kind of move wherever you want. Believe it or not, there have been times where I have move blocked myself with Gargoyles. So just clearing off a little bit of the board in order to make sure that your Gene Stealers get where they need to go could be important. Then we have a Biovore, because again, we were playing Tyranids. And then we have 2x10 Gene Stealers to go with those Broodlords, because they just activate really, really well. Triple Lictor, a lot of scoring. Double Neurolictor is 6-man Ravener. I love Raveners. If you haven't activated with Raveners with Surprise Assault and +1 to wound with Twin Linked, you haven't played a game of Warhammer 40k before. 6-man Raveners with +1 to hit from a Surprise Assault, and if they fail their Battle Shock, you get the +1 to wound with Twin Linked. Yeah, the Raveners just shred so many different things. They're very, very good. And I honestly do like the 6-man squad, because, if you look at the rest of the list, we have plenty of scoring as it is. Then, double Screamer Killer. What I liked about the Screamer Killer is you can move the Neurolictor up, be within 12 of whatever the Screamer Killer is going to be looking at. It's going to scream at that thing. They'll take a Battle Shock check at -1. If you're able to have the Death Leaper next to them as well, that Battle Shock is also going to be at -2. Then there's a good chance that they fail, and then the Neurolictor's within 12, and then your entire rest of your army gets +1 to wound against them. Very, very cool. And then the Zoanthropes. They're there to be Zoanthropes. And they're just a really good unit, and they activate another level of synergy with a Battle Shock. If they're being led by the Neuro Tyrant, they should be. Then they're going to get +1 to hit, and then as well as +1 to wound into that Battle Shocked unit. It's a pretty cool list. Check it out. All right, that's the video for this week. If you enjoyed it, comment, like, subscribe, consider being a member. It helps us out a lot, and it gets your army list reviewed a little bit quicker. If you have nothing to comment the word toothbrush. Looking for those toothbrushes out there. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I'll see you Wednesday. Bye.